I left home and my mom was like, come talk to us with this therapist. And I was like, no, I'm leaving. And then I went, and it was like a friend of ours who's a therapist. And it was like literally like them begging me to stay and me like leaving and just screaming and crying and my sister there. It was like pulling myself apart from my family, which had meant very, very much to me up until that point.
Can we get a nice little round of applause for this beautiful scenery, for this energy, for this man here, Matisyahu, in the building today for our Therapy Sessions pod?
Thank you.
How are you, man?
I'm great. I'm great.
I want to shake your hand
as
we get started with all this, and we really dive into the awesome energy that is our Therapy Sessions podcast here with Happy Jack Entertainment. It's all about destigmatizing and letting folks know therapy is awesome. It's okay to talk mental health. It's all right to really tap into that energy that helps us all become better, wiser, stronger, but vulnerable at times, emotions at times. And with you, such an amazing career, life journey. I think we have to start at the top with the idea of who Matisyahu is, man, and where are you at in your heart right now, brother?
Right now, we're going to go chronological.
Let's start from then and build our way up to where we are here.
We'll start back from the top. I grew up across the river here. This is the Hudson River. I grew up in White Plains, which is across the river here. This is in Westchester County. My father did most of his work in Yonkers and Elmsford, Mount Vernon. He ran a homeless housing agency and then a low-income housing company. My mother's was a school social worker. It's a perfect podcast for me to be on. I've been surrounded by therapists and social workers my entire life.
Yeah.
All of my parents' friends are therapists or social workers. I was in therapy from maybe, nowadays kids, a lot of kids are in therapy quite a bit earlier, but when I was maybe 14, I started seeing a therapist and starting my journey of self-discovery and all that.
What I want to hang on is the idea of being tapped in and you know, learning how to be your best self and going through therapy and getting the opportunity to be there at a young age in a time where, man, there was a lot of hurdles that we had to get over as older adults, you know what I mean, at that day. And you know, now, as you mentioned, kids and young people are, you know, able to tap in with therapy a lot sooner and you know, it's more of a prevalent thing. But then, what did it mean to you to be able to ask for help, to get the help, to be able to learn?
Well, my first therapist that I saw was kind of like, I don't think very impactful. My parents were sending me to therapy because I was smoking weed, so they were nervous about that. And the therapist himself was just kind of whatever. I remember my parents their attitude towards him. I remember him being a nice guy. He wasn't like, nothing wrong with him, but I don't remember those sessions being impactful, those very first sessions. But when I was about 16 is when kind of like I had like a shift. I went to Colorado that summer and I kind of like experienced being out in the woods, and that had an effect on me, a profound like spiritual effect on me. And at that point I started feeling this kind of like emptiness, like this lonely feeling, this feeling of like being alone in the world. I mean, being in the woods for the first time maybe and seeing like just the immensity of the creation and feeling so small. How
vast the world can be.
And then at that point, what came along with that for me was to start thinking about God and what like the relationship with God. It didn't come from my parents because they're not religious or necessarily like believers, and it didn't come from my community because I didn't grow up in like a religious community or a Jewish community. It came from like that moment, I would say. And then at that point I went to Israel that fall on like an exchange kind of program, and I studied there for like 3 months. And while I was there, I kind of experienced more.
Yes.
And then when I came back from there, I think is when I met Patty. I think that's when I started seeing Patty Bettman is her name. And she I think still to this day has an office in Hartsdale, Greenberg,
Okay. All right.
pretty
Let's
close.
say this, right?
And she was just the coolest. She was like this kind of hippie lady, and and that was my parents were driving me crazy, and I was driving them crazy, I guess, and getting in trouble in school and stuff like that. And she was just in my corner, you
Yeah.
know. She was just like, she loved me. I could tell.
I can feel it in the way that
Yeah.
you're reliving these stories here.
She vibed with me. She really, really like was like into kind of like who Matt Miller, this crazy kid. I had dreadlocks, and I would ride my bicycle. I would ride this old bicycle that was like my mom's bike or something from White Plains, and I would listen to like Indian music, like tablas and like chanting, and I had like my hair wrapped up, and I would like ride through the projects because that was the route to get there.
Yeah.
And just like it was always for me, I was like this kind of thing going against kind of what the rest. I always felt like the rest of the world was like moving in a direction, and I was kind of like either sometimes dancing through everything, sometimes trying to swim through, you know, currents coming the other way.
The visual I get is swimming upstream, you know.
Yeah, sometimes. But sometimes
yeah.
it was gliding upstream in a way, you know. So I remember like those moments of like riding my bike to Patty, you know, to my therapy session, and then just having someone in my corner. And I remember just feeling good, leaving those sessions feeling good, and feeling like, you know, like she also understood like my parents were a little bit uptight. So
With that, how cool was it and how important is it? Because this comes up a lot during our conversations here on our therapy sessions pod, is the importance of having somebody in your corner when you maybe didn't realize that you needed it, but to know the value in being able to, you know, to grow and learn who you are, but to have somebody who's there to support and to allow you to do that, to swim upstream at times, to glide with.
That's what, you know, I think as a teenager, in a lot of ways, depending on the type of therapy that you need, you know, some people need like really maybe some deeper kind of therapy.
Yeah.
But for a lot of teenagers that are in therapy or whatever, it's like you just need an adult who gets you, right? Because your friends might get you or they may not. But like that's a whole thing with peers. But to have an adult who's just kind of cool, who's just kind of like understands where you're coming from, they might not agree with it, or they might even tell you it's like not the best way, but for someone who's not not being judgmental, that to see an adult who's not judgmental but has an opinion, I think that's kind of like the thing.
Is counterculture a word maybe that, you know what I mean? But because there are a lot of young people that find that difficulty in trying to connect with their parents because they're just being genuinely who they are. What did it feel like for you to not necessarily be different, but to be yourself and to know that that was the path that you had to follow?
Well, like I was saying, so my parents, well, if you like the background, they come from like hippie backgrounds, so. But the point is that those last couple of years in high school were difficult years for all of us. And part of it was like I wasn't willing to mold, like to become anything other than what I what I blatantly was at that point. And they weren't willing to budge either. So there was like a butting of heads. And that process of like 2 years of fighting at that particular time in my life affected me deeply.
Yeah.
And so how that ended was with me leaving home when I was 17. And literally, like, I left home and my mom was like, come talk to us with this therapist. And I was like, no, I'm leaving. And then I went, and it was like a friend of ours who's a therapist. And it was like literally like them begging me to stay and me like leaving and just screaming and crying and my sister there. It was like pulling myself apart from my family, which had meant very, very much to me up until that point. And then I went and I lived on the streets in Burlington, Vermont, and slept in the park and traveled around with fish. So that's like the next segment. But I just wanted to like make it clear that it was like not just like a kind of like there was some tough stuff going on for me, even though I had like been in therapy before.
With that, I mean, with what you're expressing and sharing with us, the importance of embracing, the journey and being willing to believe in yourself enough to know that this is where I want to go with my life. This is where, you know, I'm heading. How important was that for you to stay true to that?
I had to do it, you know?
Yeah.
I had to. I just felt like that was one of my first like major life decisions was the decision to leave home at 17, and with no money, with like a bag of quarters. And that was like one of those life decisions where it was like, this is huge. Like, everything changes from this point forward. I went and I visited my crazy cousin Adam Newman in Rybrook, son of like a wealthy lawyer. And he had these tree houses he had built in these trees outside his house, and was like taking LSD and like just like swinging around in the trees, and had lived in Grand Central Station, like in the tunnels at some point, like in the late 90s. So I went to him and I was like, I'm thinking about leaving. And he was like, yeah, go for it. And he was a mentor for me.
Yeah. He was that grown up who got it.
Yeah. But he was out of his mind. Like I would never tell anyone to do that. Like I would be like, you're crazy. Do not drive away with a bag of quarters right now. You do not have the capability of like handling yourself in the world.
But you found your path, and it's led to where we are now. And as we further talk throughout this pod, this episode today, we're gonna
Adam Newman is an accountant now.
Wow.
With a family.
With a family, he's set. He's good. He's
no,
got
I'm
his
just
own
saying.
family.
Yeah, he's very, very normal.
I'm loving the type of energy that we have here with Matisyahu. He was the Therapy Sessions pod here. I'm Maxwell, sitting next to Grammy nominated, musician du jour, a scholar when it comes to life lessons.
Keep them coming. This is good. I like this.
I'm gonna let you know what it is, fam. It's a Therapy Sessions podcast. We're turning up the volume on mental health and mental health awareness. Maxwell, Matisyahu.